During this presentation, we will be addressing how the role of religion has evolved across time in US elections. Now, to do that, we will be using several US electoral campaigns and presidential elections. In this clip, I will be talking about the background of modernisation in the USA and the 1976 election with Jimmy Carter. This will be followed by the 1980 election with Ronald Reagan and the 2000 election between George W. Bush and Al Gore. To finish, we will be talking about the 2016 and 2020 election with Donald Trump. And hopefully we will come to a satisfactory conclusion about the evolution of religion in politics in the USA. Before I talk about Jimmy Carter's 1976 presidential campaign, it's important to look at the culture and history of the USA in the 60s and 70s leading up to the 1976 election. There were many social movements in the 1960s, such as the Civil Rights Movement and the Gay Liberation Movement, and these really challenged the normative conceptions of Americanism and what it really means to be American. This was coupled with the movement towards more secular rulings by the Supreme Court, such as Engel versus Vitale in 1962, which deemed daily prayer in schools unconstitutional, and Roe versus Wade in 1973, giving women the right to abortion. Many evangelicals were really concerned with the social movements and secular rulings by the Supreme Court and really worried about the direction that the USA was going in. Looking forward to Jimmy Carter's 1976 presidential campaign, this was key for many reasons. Jimmy Carter was the first presidential candidate to openly and candidly talk about his Christian faith and use it as a selling point during his campaign, saying, "I think I'll be a better president because of my deep religious convictions." As a result, 1976 was labelled as the year of the evangelical. This style of religious campaigning was really crucial at a time of such cultural and social change in the USA, as mentioned from my previous slide. Conservative Christians were really concerned and had the feeling that the USA was losing its Judeo-Christian identity. And a lot of religious Americans really thought that Jimmy Carter was the answer and that he could save the soul of the USA. Another key point to note is that Jimmy Carter was a Democrat, which raises the question of religion and political polarization. Now, in 1976, religion wasn't always partisan. You had magazines such as Christianity Today, who used non-ideological advertisements to campaign for Christian statesmanship, neither Democratic nor Republican. There were many outcomes of the Carter presidency in 1976 to 1980. Even though he won the vote of many evangelicals in 1976, he quickly lost their support, and Christian conservatives were disappointed by Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was a staunch supporter of upholding the separation of church and state, much to the frustration of the Christian right. Evangelicals expected Jimmy Carter to crack down on the liberal advances of the 1960s and 70s, such as the right to abortion. But in actual fact, Jimmy Carter deferred on these issues, and he supported bills such as the Equal Rights Amendment. The more Jimmy Carter deferred on these issues, the more the Christian right mobilised. And the evangelicals were confused by Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter had campaigned using his Christian faith, but once in office, he didn't do what the evangelicals expected of him in regard to policy making. This led to the founding of the Moral Majority in the late 1970s, and the picture in the bottom right here is Jerry Falwell, who was a founding member of this group. And he was credited with encouraging evangelicals to get involved in politics and getting millions of evangelicals to register to vote. And even in the late 70s, we can already see the power of the mobilization of the Christian right, with the Christian Right and the Catholic Right to Life Committee credited with election wins against incumbent Democratic senators in 1978, showing the immense power of the religious vote even in the late 1970s. The consequences of Jimmy Carter's campaign. Jimmy Carter really brought religion back into the political sphere. He gained the vote of evangelicals in 1976, but quickly lost their support, and the Christian right began campaigning for Ronald Reagan in 1979. However, this was the point of no return for evangelicals in politics in the USA, and they were now firmly inserted into politics. In 1976, there was just 1,000 evangelicals at a National Prayer Congress, and by 1980, there were over 200,000 evangelicals at a Washington for Jesus rally, showing how quickly the Christian right had mobilized in the USA in politics. The conclusions that we can draw from this period of time in US politics is that there are real consequences for polarization even at this stage. So when Ronald Reagan wins the election in 1980, evangelical really begins to have a more heavily conservative connotation, and we can see this from the statistics here. So in 1972, 50% of US evangelicals identified with the Democratic Party, and by 2004, 56% of evangelicals identified with Republicans, showing how party identification regarding religion really switches. And this is really emphasised by Ronald Reagan winning the 1980 election with the help of evangelical voters and the Christian right.